Okay,
Oh,
you ready?
I am ready. I had to click got it because it was telling me that we're recording.
Okay, cool. So, welcome to episode number 39
39.
of the Digital Calm. Yeah, baby, here we are. About to get into a cool topic today, which is it's actually interesting because I had a little shift in perspective about things, which we'll get into.
Oh, that
Um,
sounds
so
exciting.
Yeah, so it's interesting in that aspect in terms of exploring it. And so as not to keep people in mystery, we're going to be talking about being and becoming. Um, so, yes, I thought, yeah, I had some nice shifts and epiphanies. But before we get into that, so what kind of stuff has been going on in your neck of the woods?
Well, it's been a great week. It was my birthday week last week,
Oh, yeah,
as
that's
you
right.
know. And so
We talked about that on the last episode, how the
we
fact that you're
did.
dust now. How does it
Bearing
feel to
in,
be dust?
well, you tell me, you've been it for longer than I have,
Whoa,
given that you are, what, 2 years older than me.
I see.
So exactly back at you. But I've actually had a really great week with lots of cake, which has been smashing, and lots of friends and family, more than I was kind of expecting. So that was
Nice
really,
one.
really nice. Exactly. But what about you? The thing I want to know about you is how did your digital calm DJing go on whatever night it was, Thursday night, I
Yeah,
think.
last Thursday, and it was really good. It was nice to actually have a live crowd. Got lots of compliments as well. People were digging the music. Um, yeah, so it was good. I mean, that was much different than doing a sort of virtual DJing thing. So being able to do it live was quite cool. So I enjoyed that. And then being on the mic live with people, and so yes, that was good. I enjoyed it. I'll do some more of those gigs. So if anybody out there wants a DJ for some digital calm. Not the dance DJ thingy, but if you're hosting some dinner parties or more sophisticated, because this was a sophisticated affair. So the kind of music that I was playing was more to, I guess it was to keep the ambience of the room, but also allow people to chat and stuff. It was a networking event. In fact, I had a request, but I couldn't do it today because I was working. Someone wanted me to do their HR social networking thing they were doing
Oh, that would have been
this afternoon, but
amazing.
I was busy doing my other job, so I
Busy boy, busy boy.
couldn't do it. I need to clone myself because I'm getting a lot of demands on my time, and I'm actually literally at capacity now. I can't really take on another job, but someone just asked me to do another big project, but there's unless someone can make 8, 10 days in a week, I just physically can't do it. Which you always hate when you're sort of self-employed to say no to stuff. But there's only one of me, and no, I'm not hiring. I don't want any employees, so I just have to say no, which is a
Indeed.
shame.
But
But
I
yeah,
am glad to hear that last Thursday went well because
yeah.
actually, when you stop and think about it, yeah, actually, the music we play on Digital Calm is a perfect
But
backdrop.
listen, we need to do a digital calm in real, like I think I mentioned to you about the Socrates Cafe type things. I think we ought to just do some um, in-person live ones at some points in time. I think that would be pretty cool. Just have a little venue, bring people in, hold a little roundtable discussion, have the tunes playing, little
Mm.
networking, the whole 9 yards.
Well, maybe we could.
Because now there's no lockdown.
Well, exactly. Maybe we should, maybe we could do that in return for people signing up for our newsletter.
Oh yeah, or an addition.
Well, yeah,
Both. Yeah, just get them
or
there.
we could do it as a kind of a trial, and
Hmm.
then depending on how that goes, then we could open it up.
Yeah, I think it'd be
Mm,
great to do some live. I would love. I mean, I've always had in the back of my mind or on my list to do um, these sessions like we do, but do them in like an open forum. So I have a number of people participating in the conversation, which I think could be
mm,
fantastic. Like even when we do the ones when I've got Mike and Lindsay on, it's nice to have those three perspectives going on. But it'd be nice to have I don't know, 15 people in a room maybe have a nice little intimate chat. I did one of those in Leamington once, which was great. It was just an evening. We were down in, one of the new agey type place, and people were sitting on their little pillows, and we threw the topic out there, and then we were going, and yeah, so it's quite neat. I don't know if you've ever done anything like that. I've done a few. I mean, I ran one. In fact, I ran two. I used to run in Leamington, and I belonged to one in Rugby. We would just have dinner, and then there'd be a topic, and then everybody would get going, and
we have a chat. So no, I've never done one, but if you remember right back when we started this podcast, that was the kind of intention. I was missing those kind of interesting dinner party conversations, and not so much further about them being a dinner party, but actually about a group of people who had different perspectives to bring to the subject. Exactly.
Thanks for volunteering. So we're having a dinner party at your house. So that'll be a second thing. So I think we should we'll have one of these cafes out in a public place. I think you should have a dinner party, invite a handful of people around, and we'll do one of those. We'll have a digital comm dinner party at your casa.
Okay.
Nice one. Cool. And Thanksgiving sounds like the day to do that. So next month,
Thanksgiving.
People, the fourth Thursday in November. You heard it here, folks. Digital Calm. We're having Thanksgiving at Naomi's house. It's going to be Digital Calm dinner party in celebration of Digital Calm and Thanksgiving. Perfect. The details will be on our website or Twitter and Facebook.
Is it time to get into this week's topic?
Yeah, why not?
Fantastic. So let's explain where this came from. We had been thinking about doing a completely different topic. We were talking about strategic. Well, it wasn't so much strategic thinking. It was actually about strategic acting. So when you've got a strategic kind of job or role or plan, is how do you execute that strategically so you don't slip into the operation? But halfway through the week, I think I had a sudden epiphany, and I'm doing a course at the moment to try and catch up with Clay on his more philosophical side. I'm laughing. I'm never going to catch up with Clay on anything. But I'm doing this introduction to philosophy with the School of Philosophy and Economic Science. And it's introduction to practical philosophy. And I'm loving it because it's very, very similar to all of the well-being stuff I've done over the years, but with the questioning that I've always done, but never really had anybody to get into meaty discussions with. And so this week, in fact, this weekend, we started to discuss what is being as opposed to becoming. And are they one and the same, or are they different? And so I started to obviously think about this, and then I decided to chuck it out to Clay, and that is what we're going to talk about tonight. So what is being and what is becoming?
All right, nice one. And that's a nice segue into a tune that you wet everybody's whistle, and then we're gonna. And I don't know if I played this song for you before, and I must have done, or maybe I haven't, but it's because you like the whole moon thing, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a song called Moon, and it's by Little People. And you consider yourself, are you short? How tall are you?
Well, I'm somewhere between 5'1" and 5'2".
All right, so you are kind of short, aren't you?
Yeah.
I haven't seen you in real life in
ages.
Well, it's got to easily be 4 years.
No.
Yeah, easy.
Maybe it is actually.
I mean, it's been 2 years in lockdown, and I hadn't seen you a few years before that. Last time I probably seen you in real life would have been somewhere in Banbury. No, I think I was at your crib. Was the last time I saw you. Maybe.
Well, what's for sure is that I have shrunk since then, but don't tell my sons I've just admitted to that on air.
That you've shrunk. You've shrunken. All right.
Cool. Even my nephew is now taller than I am. Well, one of my nephews, the other one's very young, so.
Nice. All right. So there's being and being and becoming.
Being this, yes.
So set us up. What's the context?
Okay. So, well, it's a great question because I've now kind of worked through it and kind of got to a pause, as it were. So if you think about being from a well-being perspective, it's being a well-being. And so the context is, what is the difference? Is there a difference? And if I am being, is that in the present moment? And what does that mean? And if I am becoming, then how does that fit? Do they fit together, even though they kind of work on different, I don't know the word.
Mm.
And I'm not sure that was a very good setup of the context. So if you can flesh that out for us, please
Well,
feel
no,
free.
I'm interested to see
I've
what
got
did
all
you
my
guys
notes.
talk what did you talk about on Saturday? How was it sort of presented and which so I'm only guessing from a philosophical point of view that you were maybe looking at it from this idea of existence and consciousness and
Well,
fixed flux,
we hadn't gone into it really from that side of things because
right?
it is a practical philosophy course. And I'm actually going to pull my notes out now because, in fact, I think that's what we're thinking about next week rather than necessarily this week. So we were talking about knowing thyself,
Okay.
which is interesting actually because somebody also said to me today about knowing myself.
Little
Um,
Socrates, know thyself.
well, exactly. And you do like your Socrates, which
I
is probably
do.
why I thought of you. So it was really around the kind of how can we approach ourselves? How do we understand ourselves? And then as a result of knowing essentially what does self-knowledge mean? So once we know that, then we almost went into the more philosophical side, if you like, or we posed it as a question and we didn't really necessarily answer that as such. But yeah, so
Okay. So what was your conclusion in terms of how do you know yourself?
well, it was really interesting. So I think of when we talk about knowing thyself and they answering the question, who am I? Um, I think about
Is that the two different questions? Who am I versus knowing thyself?
it could be. Explain
It
more.
kind of it kind of feels like it to me because when I don't know if I'm thinking who am I, it feels very existential. So who am I as a being? What am I doing in this universe? Kind of thing. And then when you say know thyself, to me, almost has that sort of personal development sense, as in, and I'm thinking again back to sort of ancient Greeks and Socrates, and the fact that the sole purpose was to be excellent in all things that it's possible to be excellent in, whether it's practical, physical, spiritually, mentally, intellectually. So their whole thing was this idea about arete, which is to be excellent. And then they had that sort of moral sense to that too. So the good life and the moral. So part of this arete aspect in knowing thyself is, um, you know, knowing one, developing to your full potential in those spaces. So how do I become an excellent being? How do I become a great runner? How do I become a great warrior? How do I become a virtuous person? So, and I know you always kind of, for whatever reason, think from my perspective that philosophy isn't practical, but for the philosophers that I like, they were all about the human development aspect, and it was all very much around the practical stuff, wasn't it? It was how to be, how to how to live was the question that they were answering, and how to be excellent in all things that it's possible to be excellent in. So they very much would have been all arounders versus sort of specialists as we have today. Hence why, you can have a soldier who's the greatest philosopher, Western philosopher, who was actually a foot soldier. Plus you have people like what's his name, Diogenes, who lived in a flipping barrel, so he was a bum, but but great philosophers. So interesting. But yeah, so I mean yeah. So you were looking at it from so to know thyself. That's what I was at. I was getting at. Are those two different things? Who am I and know thyself? But that's just how it came across to me. It feels like they're different.
Well, so I would say that actually the way you've just explained it, so to know thyself and who am I, are just simply different ways of asking what am I being, what's my being, and what am I becoming? But if we kind of go back, I see them almost like back to back. So know thyself is to understand kind of who am I. It's to understand. So who am I would be to understand kind of what's going on deep inside, what your, where your thoughts come from, where your beliefs have developed from, and how they fuel yourself is knowing thyself. But you can't know thyself if you don't understand where they've come from in the first place and your context. So, I mean, obviously we've got completely different heritages, and it's understanding, actually, has that context had a bearing on us? Well, yes, it has. Are we aware of that? Maybe not. It doesn't, that bit doesn't matter. It's more of the who am I, and that's deep down. And then knowing thyself would be to go, okay, well, this is what fuels me, this is what motivates me, this is what interests me, but then also how I can then be in the world as a result of who am I, and knowing myself. What do I enjoy doing? And then that's also the being and the becoming. So where I got to, I suppose, in my own self was, I am who I am. And in fact, there's a
It's
Hebrew
Popeye.
phrase.
I
Well,
am who I am, and that's all that I am.
that's it's a phrase, I think, attributed to God, probably from the Bible. I am that I am. And I am that I am is the being. It doesn't change, it's constant. The becoming is when I realize that I don't know, maybe I've slipped into negative thinking, or maybe I want to develop a skill. So that would be where you'd move into the personal growth. And the becoming, okay, it wouldn't necessarily be about learning skills, but it could be. But it would actually be more about, how can I change my mindset, or my attitude, or my paradigms, or my approach to things.
Yeah. You got a quizzical look. Why are you having a quizzical look?
Because I am really now talking off the fly, so I don't know if it's coming out clearly. I'm not using my
I would say
notes.
that you have a lot going on, but almost that you're layering them on top of each other, is what I would say.
Yeah, well, I'm good at that. So
You're laying them all on top of each other.
I know that I'm good at that because I know myself.
Okay, so if we just take be and being, what is that?
So for me, so this is what I've written down. I'm going to go back to my notes. So being, as opposed to doing or thinking or owning, being at one, whether that's with yourself, whether it's within yourself, whether it's in yourself in the moment, but that moment being kind of eternal, the being who I am. It's almost like character, isn't it, versus personality, actually. So that being is constant, or is constant enough.
Okay. So it's almost as if that kind of being is looking at, well, no, I guess it can, yeah. So a school of philosophy, I guess, looks at being, and if you just look at the definition, being, so being is a condition, it's a state, it's a circumstance, it's a fact of existing. You are sitting in that chair, I'm sitting in this chair, we exist, and we're here, we're present. Um, More conventional meanings than of being is that, the state or fact of existence, the consciousness of life, that which has actuality. So materially, we are here, we be, and it's kind of the basic nature or essence, or as you just mentioned about personality, our ways of looking at being. It's a state, it's a state of existence, basically. And then becoming is more about a process of becoming
Yes.
something, that you're evolving into something, that you turn it into something. Um, so one is about time fixed, because I'm a being, I exist, and
Mm-hmm.
the other one's about time in flux, which I thought was interesting. I got a picture somewhere that I meant to send you, but I didn't. send it to you. And now, where do I have it? But let's put a tune on, and I'll find this picture.
Well, could I just say my
Yeah, go
notes
for it.
about becoming? So, absolutely, essentially, when I was thinking about it, I thought, well, becoming is like maturity. So, it's what are you evolving into, which I know you just said. And I was thinking about this and I thought, actually, you can see it really clearly when you look at how children develop, especially at the transition stages. So, whether that's them changing from preschool to that first year at school, whether it's kind of end of primary school and into secondary school and throughout their teens. You may know more about when they're in their 20s. I've obviously not seen that. But that becoming, you can see what they're becoming. You can see the aspects of their character and you can see their personality gets changed according to who they're hanging around with at school. So then this was where I went, okay, so this is how an individual is and interacts with the world. It's an external reflection of their being inside. And that was where I'd got to. I've got more notes, but that's probably
Yeah,
quite
that's
good
cool.
to
Yeah,
come
that's
into the
cool.
tune.
Yeah, I like it. And I think I found my diagram, but we'll go to a tune now, and then we'll come back. Because I want to address that. Because one of my favorite philosophers who didn't consider himself a philosopher, who didn't like philosophers, was Nietzsche. And he's a big on the being and becoming, but he's more of a fan of becoming than not being, which is what kind of sort of shifted my perception of the whole sort of being bit. Because, yeah, so we'll get into that a little bit. This is called "Don't Come Back" by Mononome. Mononome.
You would be lonely if I didn't come back.
Mononome. No, yeah. If you didn't come back, I'd be lonely. I wouldn't be lonely. I would jump for joy. I'd be like, holy shit, I'm finally free. Oh no, I might have to make this rated X now. Well, I have to put explicit on this episode.
I think we might have to have a little chat about that, but
Yeah.
maybe offline.
Yeah. I'm free. I was free.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
about that. Right, so back to being and becoming. So the being is Digital Calm as co-host, and the becoming is the Digital Calm is Clay on his own. Some
Yeah. Whatever you just said.
you weren't listening there, were you?
No, I wasn't.
And this is why it wouldn't matter if I wasn't actually here. Okay, thanks for that. Okay, great.
There was words coming out of your mouth, but I wasn't listening. I was thinking, I have somebody. This is the thing. I got to be host and I've got to be producer at the same time. So I have to be paying attention to the technical stuff that you are oblivious to. I just make
Well,
it all happen for you. And
you
people
do.
say men can't multitask. Um,
Well, I
but I
think
got this hand is doing stuff, this side is doing stuff, and I got to pay attention to you.
with us, it's completely the other way around because I can't multitask these days.
Mm.
Used to be able to, burned out, can't do it now. And I'm not oblivious to what you do on the technical side. I am hugely grateful.
Now you are
But you
oblivious. As
say
you
you
can't
couldn't
see
give a
it.
monkeys. No, but I know
You
that
know that it's happening, but you don't realize what is happening.
no, I don't need to
Yeah.
know, but I am grateful. And I know that without you doing your stuff, we wouldn't be doing this.
The
So
man's over
yes.
here spinning the wheels, baby. Got to keep the bus moving.
So
Yeah. Okay. So,
self-reflection and
huh?
awareness is important because if you can be objective and not stuck in the drama of the moment, you can find out more about who you truly are. So your being
Yeah.
and who you want to be, i.e., who you want to become.
Okay. So you. There's a conversation that says I exist. I'm here. I'm this being that materially exists. And then what do I want to become? And this is where Nietzsche was getting at in terms of the being and becoming, and why he was more of a fan of becoming, because it was more about the dynamic state of potential. And then for him, it was to use your own agency or will to power, is what he called it, to create the person that you want to be. So don't rely on religion. Don't rely on, any spiritual gurus. It was about you as a person, as a being, using your own agency or will to power to create who you want to become. Whereas in the sort of being sort of sense was about almost abdicating to fate. So So the school of thought on that one is the fact that being is static and buys into the notion that a thing is a thing is or a thing isn't, and that you have to discover the thing that you are. So you're already it, because things exist and things don't exist, and you're there. So you just have to find or discover the thing that you are, the label, and then mold yourself or your identity to that label. And Nietzsche was against that, as in you needed to create it, not discover it and grow into it and mold yourself into some other person's being's label, what have you.
But
Um,
surely the two need to coexist.
um,
You
and
can't constantly.
this is why I was saying that there's probably a couple of different levels that we may be looking at this at, or semantically looking at this, in a jumbled sense. And I get what you're saying. So if we, on one level, I'm be and I'm going to become. So I'm in this state now. I want to move to another state and become a thing, of something else. So, yeah. So the groundwork is the being. So if we look at be, is to exist, to be around, to be actualized. You're a thing. You're here. And because some, again, would say that, remember, if you think of some of the other stuff we talked about on here, when people talk about, to be one with self, to be, it's not to become one with self, it's to be one with self. So you
Mhm,
are, um, being, and you talk about, sitting and meditation and just being. You're not
mhm,
dynamic, you're not moving, you're being. You're just here in this present moment. But so that's a level if you're looking at being in that way. Um, and then another level is, I think, this idea of potential. So we think Maslow and those kind of guys, and how do you reach your highest potential? And so there's some stuff that you need to do to to transform, to self transform into, this higher being, or higher state of being, in terms of reaching your potential. I'll just, and the people on YouTube will be able to benefit from this, but you guys um, on the listening to the podcast won't be able to benefit for this, because I'm just getting ready to share my screen here. So, because I was just, and maybe I'll draw this diagram, and share it. Let me
Was
share.
this what you were going to send me that you never got around to
This was I
sending?
was gonna send to you
Can we
or share
put it
with you.
in the email that goes out?
Um, I'd have to do a different version of this because I'm just giving you a raw picture. Um, but let me bring it up. Can you see that now?
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Well, that's a bit complicated.
Yeah, but only just to direct your attention to just this bottom part here, the time
Time flux
flux.
and time
Yes.
fixed. Oh, I
Yeah, so
like that. Oh,
yeah.
I do like
So
that.
this is visually saying what I've just was, talking about just now. So, just to describe it to the listeners, then. So if you think of it as an axis, and you go in horizontal. Then above the line is time flux. Below the line, time fixed. Below the line is being, so static, and then above the line is becoming, dynamic. And then just draw almost a one going into the other, going back into the other again. So almost a cyclical aspect, kind of what you were just saying as well, in terms of, are they related? So yes, I'm a being, but maybe in the sense that, we're in the world that we come from, for the personal development and self development and self actualization and all, we don't stay static. We're always in that state of going and evolving to our highest potential. So then, in the middle of this, is about actualizing one's potential. So then you've got plus or minus potential. So, we're always in this state of, am I actualizing my potential? Then am I maximizing that sort of self actualization I got, I guess? And then the far end of this thing, is the ground, and then the goal. So maybe the ground is the base spot where you are now. So if you was to stop and reflect, here is where I am. My goal is to get to this sort of next level. And then so tying back into your Greek philosophy and stuff like that, and or all philosophy, I suppose, on that. So you might look at the goal in terms of your ethical and moral self. So what's the higher good that you want to um, you know live towards or dedicate your life towards being? I want to be an honest person, for instance. And then how do you self-actualize being an honest person? And then you live in your life to that concept of being an honest person. Um, and in the other sort of moralistic kind of piece or guideline that you want to put there, that you might not always achieve it, but you're always striving for it, and there's never an end point. You're always striving to be it, and sometimes you lapse, and sometimes you fall way off the mark, but you continue to strive to be that kind of person that you want it to be. And so that cycle just keeps repeating itself in terms of going from static to dynamic and self-actualizing. As many of you are into the sort of Maslow and that kind of stuff, and your little Maslow's triangle, and self-actualization being the top of that pyramid is what we're trying to achieve, self-actualization. Um,
So, and I know this isn't a neat link, but in the middle there, you would have heard me do a gasp because I kind of went, oh, it was one of those kind of light bulb moments. Um, Time fixed, time flux in here, we're talking about being and becoming. Is it linked with when people would talk? I'm saying, is it linked with? There is a link with a fixed mindset and
growth
a
mindset.
growth mindset. And although it's very different, and these are two, a fixed mindset is very different than what we're talking about. But there is this, but if you were only ever being and you were never becoming, you would actually end up being quite stagnant, and nothing would ever get done. Nothing would change, nothing would move, which is why I'm linking it with, as Stephen Covey would talk about, character being kind of the roots beneath the ground and personality being what you see out in public. The character is the being, the personality. And it's, again, none of these are easily replicable. There's links that I can't quite explain. The personality is the becoming. You can change that. You might be shy, but you can work on that so that actually you come across so that you're not shy. As you've just said, I want to be an honest person. Well, first of all, that presupposes that you're not honest. So what are the steps that you can take? And
So it does
how
have,
does
yeah,
that
I was
work?
going to say it doesn't necessarily presuppose that you are not an honest person, but you want to live an honest life. And so what you don't do is you don't go around telling lies. You're capable of telling lies, but because your value is to be an honest person and that's how you want to live, then you structure your life around being an honest person and doing things that are true. And everybody likes to be honest, but let's be honest. Not all of us are honest all the time. You tell your little white lies and you tell things to spare people's feelings, all that kind of stuff. So while you can aspire to be honest, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not honest. It just means that, you're when you're faced with making a decision, you choose to want to be honest, but sometimes you don't choose the honest route for whatever reason, sparing somebody's feelings. Somebody else might get hurt if you're honest in a particular situation, and so then you go against it. Um, your principle of wanting to be honest, for
Mm.
instance. Um, and then this idea about personality. So Jung's whole thing was about individuation, and the fact of becoming a whole person. So his thing was the reason why we have personalities as they exist now, and the sort of Myers Briggs and all those aspects, is because we have underdeveloped sides of ourselves. So if you're an extrovert feeling type, then it means that your introverted thinking type is underdeveloped. So I've for whatever things lined up in the universe in my early development, I leaned more towards the extroverted feeling preference, and then I developed that because I was being rewarded from it from my parents, or I got appraised for being in that space, and so I did more of that and strengthened it. And so, because my introverted thinking side, then from Jung's point of view, is now underdeveloped, I don't know how to express it. So, you normally get the negative qualities of your underdeveloped personality aspect. So for me, it would be being a scatterbrain, being a not very organized, not being a person that's very good with details, and because while as a human I'm fully capable of doing those things, from the developmental stage, I've given more preference to my extroverted feeling side, and so I'm very good at that. Not so good at details, not so good at being organized because I haven't developed that part of my personality. So for Jung, it was then that your journey, your personal development journey, is to wholeness, so that they're equal, both your introverted and your extroverted thinking, feeling sides would be equal in that world. If self-actualized, then there would be no difference. All of your parts of you would be 100% in all the categories, to which then you would be a whole person. But that was
Mm.
his kind of that was the journey, the personal development journey from a Jungian point of view, was to um, individualize yourself.
So, because now I'm thinking, right, so we're talking about being, and I do have this feeling that being is kind of is you whole, but then you've got the becoming, because you're not whole, because time is linear. And even if we were to do nothing consciously, circumstances change. The sun rises in the morning and it goes down at night. You go outside, it's raining, it's windy, it's foggy. You respond according to circumstances that you're placed in, which then, so the becoming kind of brings you back round to the being.
Yeah. So, and again, you would have to kind of pick your line of thought and take it all the way out, because, as I said, so some people's being would be, I've got to, you already are. There's nothing to become. You already are it. You just have to discover the right um, combination of things so that you can then live into that space. So if you're trying to become, you're chasing the wrong thing, because you already are it. You just need to uncover the
Mm,
aspect. Then, if you're, again, from a Nietzschean point of view, for him, becoming was everything. It was like, no, there is no predestiny. There isn't a thing that already is. You have the will to power to create whatever it is that you want to create. So there's nothing that's in existing that I'm looking for. You go out and you actually create the being that you want to be. But those are two different philosophical views in terms of what exists. From how you're expressing it here, we're looking at almost the words themselves as being the verbs of each, so to
mm,
be and then become. So you're looking at it from a linguistic point of view, I guess. Be or being. Now I'm going to become something else. So I've got this transition from one sort of state to another. And so linguistically, that's yes. Philosophically, again, where do you sit? Do you think, does your belief system, that you're born whole and perfect? There's nothing for you to become, because, God's infallible and he creates perfect beings. And so you're born perfect and whole. And then people kind of mess you up and do some stuff. So you got to unpack all that, to rediscover your wholeness, but there's nothing for you to become. But then again, you've got other schools of thoughts, and you can see where this goes, that people believe different things along that axis, really.
Mm.
But that's what I think the journey here is for people. One, to do what we're doing here. So linguistically, what are we talking about? Then look at these on different levels, the being, the becoming, and then where do you sit? Are you a person that is this whole, so that, you know, an individual has agency and we can create our own in self-actualize, and we set those conditions. Or, hey, predestiny. It's already been determined. There's nothing for me to become. I just have to live the script that's already been given to me. Um, and therefore, I'm just being, because there's nothing for me to become. But, yeah, you have to determine which one of those belief systems works best for you. And there's no right or wrong answer in that. It's just, again, where are you sourcing your info from, and then what do you innately believe?
Mm. I like that. Which of these works best for you? Time for a song.
All right, Walk
Let
in the
people have a
Sky,
think.
Bonobo. All right, okay, so now, having had a chance to think, what do you actually believe?
What do I actually
Yeah, what do
believe?
you believe? How do you orient? I mean, you've been living for 50 some odd years now. So you've been living a way. So if you reflect on your life, these however 50 some odd years you've been around, what have you oriented your life around in terms of who you are being? Um, yeah, where does your belief system fix on that sort of spectrum, I guess? Are you born a perfect and whole thing, and then you get broken by the system, and you gotta fix all that to go back to your original state? Are you born just this infinite potential, and it's up to you and your exercising of your will to power to create and actualize on that potential? In fact, to maximize that potential, and is there a cap? Or do you believe actually I can do it and there's infinite potential and I'm unbound, and it's only my sense of agency that can create this unlimitless me type thing? Or is there a fourth way? Do you believe all of that's out of the way, and it's just about, meditating and becoming enlightened and being, a spiritual being, and that's your journey, is to get to that space of a spiritually whole, enlightened being that has a nice glow or aura around them.
So I think it probably fluctuates between 2, 3, and 4. Um, I don't believe that we are here to be spiritual beings, because I think if that was the case, we probably wouldn't bother to incarnate. However, I do believe that part of the journey of becoming your whole being is to connect with the spiritual side of yourself and to bring that into being in the day-to-day moment. But to
To
do
bring
that
that
in
into
quite,
existence,
sorry,
just
to bring
so
that
that,
into
yeah,
existence. Yeah,
that's you're using the word being in the
sorry.
sense of the definite. No, I'm just saying, just for clarification for people, in a way that so you want to bring that into existence.
So essentially, it would be being more of yourself in every moment. So, but yes, but in existence. So it's not about sitting and meditating all of the time. It's about going about your daily life in a way that is more of you being at peace with yourself. Now, again, maybe that's my thing, because I've been very much on the journey of learning to love myself for exactly who I am. So if you go back to, and that means being at peace with yourself, and that's kind of where I'm coming from and why it's linked there. So when I say 2, 3, or 4, I do believe that we have infinite potential. There are times when I have believed that that infinite potential is capped, but what I now believe is it's not that it's capped, but it's about it's not just about willpower. So I always thought that I could make anything happen just by kind of that sheer determination and willpower. What I'd never foreseen was maybe if my body or my brain couldn't work with that. And so then it was, okay, well, what do I need to do so that I can still fulfill my potential and still keep developing? But I might need different things. And those different things may be as simple as taking a vitamin supplement. There's a lot of women of a certain age who, frankly, really benefit from taking iron. Suddenly we have energy that we didn't know we had. So it could be something as simple as that. It could be getting up and going for a run gives you the energy because you're moving. So, yeah, I'm not sure that answers your question very clearly, but I kind of fluctuate between all 2, 3, and 4, and I can't remember what one was, but it clearly didn't sit with me.
One, but I was, and that's just. I mean, I just picked those off the top of my head. Those aren't there's loads of different schools and systems of thought, and I mean, so I literally just picked those three. So I wasn't asking you to choose from those three. I was just giving examples of particular schools of thought, just to ask you what yours was. But I was just using those as an example because there's loads, as many as there are people there are. There's loads of different schools of thoughts and philosophies and ways of being, and more. There's a lot.
So
Um,
what about you? What about you? I'm curious.
yeah, well, I think for me, it's always been that we are, and this is probably stems back just because that's what my mom was always drumming into my head. Again, that we have infinite potential, and it's up to me to create it. So never to depend on anybody else to give that to me, or to stop me from having it. So for her and to me, in terms of what I've adapted, is yeah, I can do anything that I set my sort of mind to. And probably hence why I have so many books and things, is like when I come across something that I don't know, I don't two things I don't do. One is I don't go take a course necessarily to learn it, because I'm much more of a self learner. So I just go buy a book, or books, and I learn how to do it. And then I fool around, experiment until I understand the thing, and I've sort of conquered that thing, and then I can kind of move on. But I was kind of raised in that vein, and I've kind of adopted and never rejected that, and continued to strengthen it. So for me, it is about the becoming, as in self-actualizing. So a journey of self-actualization to reach my sort of highest potential. And what would that sort of look like? So I think we throw those terms around. Well, what's a self-actualized being? Actually, what it looks like. Um, and I think for me, in terms of what would that be, and one aspect is kind of like those Taoist shamans, where you got these superhuman abilities. I can withstand loads of cold, heat, don't need food. You just have total self mastery. For me, it's a self actualized being. I don't have to give in to my desires. Um, I'm not swayed by opinion of people. I've raised myself to be self-contained, self-mastery of mind. Even because some would say we're slaves to our mind, and your
Mm.
mind's just telling you, like we were talking about in self-talk, and all little thoughts going on in your mind is telling you these things, and you believe it, and then it becomes true for you because that's the kind of conversations that are going on in your head, when actually they're not true, but you believe it and you make decisions off of it. So the mind's beautiful, but it's also can be its own prison, because it's thinking that it's doing the right thing for you to keep you safe and all of that. But in essence, it can be destroying you and protecting you. So yeah, so self mastery is the simplest thing for me. So how do I self actualization to me is the self mastery. And if you want an image of that, it's the Kung Fu master, Taoist master. So yeah, so that's where I kind of sit in that space, and I don't need like a hummus blessedness from anybody in terms of things that I can do, things that I want to do. I just figure out how to do them and I kind of go do them. I don't need permission from anybody. Um, and if I have the conversation or I can't do that, then I do say, well, actually, I can if I want to, and then prove myself right when I need to, even if I don't actually want to do the thing, but it's just to prove I can do that. I'll figure it out and make it happen. So yes.
See, I think that's probably more unusual. Whereas I believe that, but I think I've got something in me that stops me, which in fact I've been having a variety of conversations this week. And we're talking about people pleasing with some of my clients. And I think that's the thing. There's a lot of very strong-willed people out there, hopefully listening to the podcast. But there's still this bit that I can't say it's necessarily waiting for permission, but for some people it is. But there's this part that wants to be accepted. You don't want to be disliked. And I guess some of us were brought up in a world of rules, which kind of then makes me think, so how did you then adjust to being in the army where there was rules that you had to follow for the sake of everybody's safety, not just your own?
Um, because I had a sense of who I was. So I think when you have a strong sense of identity, you can do anything. So you want me to be a soldier and do this thing, sure, but I don't have to believe it. I can just do that, and then because I don't lose myself, I guess, as in now I believe that I'm this thing, and I got to run around and be like this and that. It's like, yeah, okay, it's like being a chameleon. So do this thing because it gets me this. Okay, well that's cool. I still know who I am, and in fact, because a lot of people ask me that, but my even on, in fact, if I got all my evaluations, every single one of them says there was always a little dig about me being too laid back. Because even when I should have been like all stressed and crazy and all of that, there was still the laid backness, and I think it used to drive a lot of people mad. Some of my sort of commanders and stuff, it just pissed them off that and it wasn't, and I got everything done and got it to standard and was very good at doing what I was doing, but I just wasn't someone that needed to be running around like a headless chicken screaming and rah. It's just, yep. And I remember, and can remember at West Point there was, and I had a roommate. Luckily, we were both the same. And in the beginning, you're like this cadet, and you're all stressed, and all these upperclassmen, and we had to have all these inspections, and on a sort of in the morning, Saturday morning, big giant inspection, and there'd be people staying up all night to get ready for this inspection, shining everything, making sure everything. But me and my roommate was like, you know what? They're gonna come in here and they're gonna find something wrong, so I can waste my whole night trying to get everything right, or I can sleep. And we just slept, got up, put some stuff to, because they were going to find something wrong anyway. So for us, it was like, yeah, okay, well, and literally people would be staying up all night to get ready for these things, and we'd just be like, yeah, whatever. So, but yeah, I think it was just that is partly it. Um, yeah.
So that sense of identity is really interesting. And actually, I would say that sense of identity brings us right back round and says, so what I'm hearing is your being or your sense of identity is your being. And because you had that, you were then able to navigate the world around you without losing your sense of
Yeah.
identity, without um, I'm not sure, without abandoning your sense of being.
My sense of who I am,
Yeah.
or and again, are you using being as my existence, not my state? So, because for me, I am being who I am, but I'm in a becoming state. So I'm never satisfied. So I, yeah, I'm just never satisfied. So I'm constantly striving for this being, or becoming rather. Um, but just never satisfied in this.
Well, it's
So
not
that
that you're never satisfied. It's just that there's always something
no,
else to
I'm never
become.
satisfied. It is I'm never satisfied. There's
Well, that's why you're
almost
so grumpy.
yeah, because I always want to get somewhere. That's why I get
Sorry.
grumpy at well, no, because I get
I can't
grumpy at you.
believe I got that
Yeah,
in.
but I
You're
get
not that
grumpy at you
grumpy.
sometimes because it feels like we stay still. We're not moving forward, and that gets me grumpy because I'm always wanting to be going forward.
And I
And
have now just realized why that is.
hmm,
So I think you have a stronger sense of identity than I do. And therefore, sometimes I am desperate. So if I'm constantly in a state of becoming, because I have nothing that I am tethered to, which isn't true, I know, but I'm kind of making it very black and white. So because I'm not necessarily sure who I am, then I've got nothing to be tethered to. When I'm not tethered to anything, I'm desperate to be tethered. I'm desperate to be grounded, to be, to feel secure. And the constant becoming is exhausting because it's like you're being buffeted around by the wind.
I don't feel it that way.
No, well, but
Yeah,
you
yeah,
wouldn't because you have a stronger sense of
yeah.
identity than I do.
And I tell you, and I know, and maybe we have done, and we probably have done, the whole sort of, it was, and again, the whole belief could be completely wrong or false, but the thing that resonates with me philosophically is existentialism, as a philosophy, as in life is utterly meaningless, in which case you are free to make your own meaning. And that to me has been the most liberating thing ever, which is why I don't, when you say a sense of identity, it's like, well, I know that it's all fake, false anyway, so I can just pick any identity because it actually literally doesn't matter. So I don't have to have the perfect one because there is no perfect one and there is no set one.
Mm,
And so it's just, in strong language, it's just all BS
mm,
anyway. But that's a very existentialist point of view, is that it's actually meaningless. But the strength in that is you can create your own. And if I can create my own, anyone will do, because none of them are true. So why stress over or waste time with? And again, that's because I'm solid in that belief, but that doesn't make that belief right. But because I believe that so thoroughly, I actually don't really care. And care is probably very callous sounding, but it's like, okay, what's the difference? Because it's all made up anyway.
and
Um,
so you just shown that you actually, no, you're right, you don't care, and I think that kind of comes across. And it you don't care, and that doesn't have an impact on you because you are so solid in yourself. Whereas, and this is really when you say like existentialism, and actually if life is utterly meaningless, and I think the problem is many people get kind of stuck at that point. Well, it's utterly meaningless, therefore what's the point? Whereas what you're doing is using your philosophical questioning, I suppose, to say, well, okay, if life is utterly meaningless, then what? So you're moving it forward, and that's when you get to this point of you're
but I think
free to
that's
make your own
different though,
meaning.
because I think some people never. So some people don't see the point in life. You're right, as in, woe is me, and it's not kind of here. But they're not in a space of thinking So they haven't arrived at a philosophical point of view that says, and they're saying, that's an existentialist belief that life is meaningless. They've come to it because I don't have this, I don't have that. What's the point? I have no agency. And they're in a different headspace altogether. That's a different thing, I think, than saying, actually, I'm going to think about. So I wasn't born at that space. I thought about things, and I looked at different philosophies of life, and that one made the most sense to me. So I think that's the difference. I think some people haven't done any work, so they're just concluding because my life lacks all these things that it's shit and
Mm.
it doesn't have to be here. But they haven't done the work to say, okay, I could
Mm.
believe this is school of philosophy. Here's one, here's one, here's one. I'm picking this one. Or actually, as I did, this existentialist argument sounds interesting. And actually, from my experience, those things ring true. And so I'm adopting this as a philosophical way of being, of life. And that's how I'm living my life. But I could have just been, I don't know, done the sort of Christian philosophy or any other philosophy and pursued that. But those that make, the only other one that's come as close to making sense to me is Taoism and living in that space. That's just probably my second one. If I was picking another way of life, the Taoism would be the second uh,
Mm.
choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm. Time
Um,
for another
Tune?
tune. Yeah.
Yeah, why not? Smoke Messiah. Ooh, talking about Messiah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now, I think right at the beginning, you said that you'd had a bit of a, was it an epiphany or just an awareness or a change of thought when you're
Yeah,
preparing for
it
this?
was about the being and becoming bit. Because again, so if I go into my Eastern philosophy mode of thinking and life living, then it is about being. Remember, we talked about this
Yes.
idea with becoming
Oh.
means that I lack something, which creates duality, which is what causes all our stress and anxiety and all this because I got to become something. And because I'm not at this becoming state, I'm not at that place, then I have all these other mental problems. Where if I get into my sort of zen like feel, then actually I'm a perfect and whole being just as I am. And if I did nothing else but sit in this chair for the rest of my life, I would be fine if I just can be self-contained within my mind, and I don't have to be messing around with time and time management and getting all stressed out about all that sort of stuff. I don't have to, be a millionaire or any of those kind of things. You know, yeah. So, but that's when I get into that sort of Taoist Zen kind of mode, then I can simply just be. I don't have to become anything, not strive for anything, don't need goals, because every day is just life, and I'm just celebrating life as it is, not as we would like it to be, but as it is. And that's that whole that the thing is or a thing is not. When I said earlier about when you're kind of defining being, um, and that's a whole nother belief system, philosophical belief system, to which people are free to adapt, and then you live your life accordingly. Um, and part of this whole thing, and this is why philosophy is the most practical thing ever, despite some people's opinion, is because it's about how to live. How do you want to live your life? But
Mm.
you have to think through that. You can just take what anybody gives you, and then you're just willy nilly bouncing around, accepting whatever, and then wonder why your mental health is not there, or you're not happy, or you're anxious, and all those kind of things. Or agency, step up, have a look around, like you go into Tesco's and shop and see which one resonates with you, then pick it and then live your life according to it. And you won't always get it perfect, and you also are still free to deviate from that or change if you want to, but pick one and live according to it, and then structure your life around that, and then you'll be much better space and much happier and much more all the things that you want. But just pick one, damn
it. Well, yes. I mean, there was lots of things in there. And when you were talking actually about the being Eastern, what you didn't say was actually the becoming is more Western, which as soon as you said that, I kind of went, oh, yes. And then I took it to another level in my head and I saw the, see, look, my brain's just gone. But what I'm seeing is the picture, the black and white picture where there's
the yin and yang.
Thank you. Yeah, that's it. So actually, and then that's the duality. And as we've said, the duality, when we have a duality, that can cause us a lot of stress. But actually, when the duality is accepted as part of the whole, that's when we find that place of peace and we just are and becoming all at once. And it
But
all
then
fits
there's no
perfectly.
duality then. That's the thing. That's the whole point.
Which is
of
why
that.
it's in a, exactly, and it's
there
in
is
a
no duality.
exactly.
It's a singularity, but we create the duality, which creates the problem. So the place to get to is singularity. That there is only you become. That's the enlightenment. You become one. That's the whole thing, isn't it? It's to become one, not become two, which is duality. It's become one. You become a single thing, being, ball of light, whatever you want to call it. But you eliminate duality.
I think we're done.
No, we're not. Well, we do have another song to do, but you know what we didn't do is we haven't done any plugs for anything. I know it's kind of,
yes, we just got carried away with the conversation.
I do want to get in the habit of doing that further up in case people don't make it this far.
It's a good idea, actually.
So
yes,
we need to do it more towards the beginning. But go ahead, plug away.
Okay, so yeah, right. So this is where
sign up for the newsletter for
exactly.
one thing.
So sign up for the newsletter because the newsletter looks like there's a lot in it, but what it actually is it gives you the links to all the different ways you can listen to the one episode. So it gives you the full episode that has the conversation and the music. It also gives you just the conversation. So if you want to listen to the conversation that we're having and not have the music because you don't have the time or because you're not interested in music, that's fine. You can do that. Clay works really hard to extract the words and separate the music. And then there's also a link to the music on its own. So that's a playlist that you can use for whatever your purposes are.
Now I'm thinking, now we were talking about before about making that. No, you're right. And that's exactly what we do. But now as I'm listening to all of that, it makes it sound so complex. So in its simplicity, it's become complex. So the simplicity is this: sign up for the newsletter and you get the podcast. Done deal. If you don't want to sign because you want to sample or what have you, you can listen on Mixcloud or you can watch it on YouTube. So it's kind of as simple as that. But if you want to support the podcast because you like us and you think, yeah, I can't live without having me some digital calm once a week. We're going to save your busy schedule by delivering it to your inbox, and then it comes to you, and you're done and dusted. Perfect. But you can, if you want, subscribe to it by any other podcast means, or whatever. If you're into Apple Podcasts, it's on Spotify now, so you can subscribe there as well. Though I have to caveat, it would be the non-music version, which is fine because the words are the important bit. It's the conversation.
Exactly, the words you can't get elsewhere. Absolutely. And this is actually, you're right, this is our singularity is everything, but then we can pull out the different bits, which I get it, makes it more complicated. So if people do want to sign up to the newsletter, Clay, where do they go?
Go to Twitter and you're done and dusted. It's right at the very top. That's the simplest
where
way.
on Twitter? So you say that and then
at digital.com, sorry.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So go there. Or go to Mixcloud. That's also, is that
At
now?
Digital Calm as well.
Right, brilliant. So basically, do a search for Digital Calm on YouTube, on Mixcloud, on Twitter.
That's right. We're Digital Calm on
Come and
YouTube
hang
as
out with
well.
us.
Can't get any
Yeah.
more simpler than that. Digital Calm. And then you're in, man. You're in the club. The other thing that folks can do is one, if you have signed up to the newsletter and you're listening to this now, by all means do share it, or share on Twitter, share on Facebook, wherever, and also join the conversation, because that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on is conversations change minds. So by all means join in the conversation with us so we can expand this conversation out. I was thinking, and maybe we could try this next week, and especially we should try it because we don't have that many sort of Twitter followers, for instance, so we wouldn't get bogged down by a lot of stuff, I think. But I would like to try doing a simulcast, like doing this as we're doing, but have Twitter Space opened up and see with that one, try it, and then see if anybody joins and can be a part of that part of the conversation.
Well, let's go for it. I have absolutely
That'd
no
be it.
idea what Twittercast is, so
Twitter Spaces.
there you go.
But I think
Yeah.
that would be a neat thing to do. And the other thing we've got planned is to do. I know we used to do these things live every week, but I think maybe every fourth one we should do live, so that people can come on to listen to the show and participate and be a part of the ambience and the crowd and add their voice into it as we're recording it. So I think we should get that going. To that every fourth one be live. I think that would be pretty neat for folks.
Okay.
And be look out for the dinner party at Naomi's for end of November.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that, but I think we could come up with something that could be. But I think we've got lots of ideas and lots of things going on. So I think we probably need to just take a step back and decide, okay, what steps we're going to take next.
Now we just do them all.
So I'm just thinking
in
though,
in my spirit of unlimitless, we just do them all.
Yes, just not at the same time. So I'm just thinking about how many episodes we've done now in this new format.
Well, it's not actually a new format, is it?
Well,
Apart
no,
from
it
it's not
started
live.
off, you were going to do two songs at once. And actually, we've kind of gone back to just one song, which I do prefer, just so that you know. But I'm just trying to think, was it 35 we started with? I think it probably was. So in which case, so we've done 4. So we could have done this one live, couldn't we?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter who's counting. So I'm just and a rhythm of doing 4 and 1 would be, or doing 3 and then the fourth one there. But we can do a live one at any time. But I think we should let people know ahead of time which one's going to be live, and then we can put out an event and invite people to it to be live.
So now you've been listening to this, if you're still listening, let us know what you think. Would you like to listen to us live? Would you like to join in with tweeting and conversation online whilst we're chatting away and listening to music? What do you think?
Just get involved.
Absolutely.
Okay, so listen, we'll play one more song because we will do, and then we'll come back and say bye-bye for good. For good. This is the final episode ever. No. Yeah.
What have we got? What are we playing out with tonight?
And this is a guy, I like this dude. In fact, I started listening to loads of his stuff. He's called Nim, is his name. Yeah, he's pretty cool.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, he says that whole album I was listening to, Convex, is really good. So I was digging it. Speaking of music, on the Musical Journey show will be coming back live on Thursday, starting again. I've been absent from that sort of space, but haven't did the real live gig last Thursday. I think I got to get back into my game. So that'll be out there. There was one other thing I wanted to say, but anyway, what's our conclusion? We didn't do a conclusion. And then
Well, no, but that is funny because you said there's one other thing you want to say, and I noted kind of a section that I hadn't shared either. So, what was the one other thing you wanted to say?
I don't know. I can remember. So I
Oh,
thought,
right.
'cause I know we were saying we were breaking. So what's our, what are we concluding? Where have you moved to? Have you shifted your perspective? Are you going to adapt anything? Are you going to change anything in the spirit of personal growth? What has been the point
Yeah.
of this conversation
It's a
for you?
so what has been the point of the conversation? The point of the conversation is to uh, tell me once again that there are many, many things I don't know. And it's also kind of actually, it's reflected to me that I find it very easy to go off on kind of a bit of a flight of fancy. Whereas if I can bring it back and take it step by step, then it's easier for me to follow and probably for other people to follow too.
Okay, what has that got to do with being and being? What was
Being and
it goes
becoming.
being and
Well,
becoming?
I
Yeah.
think it,
No, I
it
get that. No, I get it. I get what you're saying. And you almost echo Socrates in there as well. He said, the only thing that I know for certain is I don't know anything.
mm,
Which, if you're going to be a philosopher, that's the whole point, is to, not to take everything at face value and to ask questions and question where things come from. Why do you hold that thought? What does it mean? And where's all that sort of stuff come from? I mean, that's the nature of being a philosopher, is being curious about, life, being curious about the things that are going on around you, and not just accepting things just because
absolutely.
someone's thrown to you. So, in your exploration tonight, is what I'm asking you. What have you learned tonight that has extended your knowledge or changed your perspective or
Well, no, genuinely. So
anything?
that is what's come up because that's really important. But I also want to pick up actually on that point you were just saying that I could never understand the point of philosophy because partly because I was never actually around people who were consciously philosophizing. Um, and therefore, asking questions as to what the purpose of life is or to what the purpose of this is kind of almost seemed futile because it was never getting anywhere. Whereas now my understanding is the question takes you further along to the next step, to the next step, to the next step. And it's understanding that and reflecting on that and how that does change your thinking and your behavior as a result of the questions that you've been asking.
Yeah, 100%. And don't forget, there's all sorts of branches of philosophy. So I would say that, there's political philosophy, there's moral and ethical philosophy. So I think people philosophize all their life. You decided you want to
Absolutely.
be Christian, Judaism, Buddhism. Those are all part of philosophy. And you choose one of them for either because your parents said to, or you think, well, actually, this seems to make sense to me in life. And so, we're constantly having that. Social media. Should I be on Twitter or not be on Twitter? That's a philosophical question. So I think when, there is some people who look at very high level metaphysical stuff that's not linked to anything apart from, people sitting around in togas because they got time to think about some metaphysical stuff. And then there's other levels and other things of philosophy of thought, philosophy of mind, philosophy of spirituality, political philosophy, language. So there's many branches of philosophy, and all of it boils down to the question of how do we want to live life, and what's the best way to live life. Should I live life as a libertarian? Because, I got this amount of time, and libertarian seems to be the best way to live a life. Or should I be a liberal Democrat? Because that seems to be the best way to live a life and supports these kinds of values. So I think that's, I guess it's the mission I've always been on with philosophy is exactly that, to bring it back to its roots as opposed to it being lost in the sort of academic metaphysical. And I like that stuff too, to play with some things where you're just playing with thought experiments, like, I don't know, do we exist? Are we a brain? Are we a brain in a vat? I like those kind of things too.
Mhm.
Those are fun to play with. But the
And I,
actual part of it
yes.
is about how to live.
And so I think that's in answering your question and bringing it around. So it's how do I want to live life? And coming back to, am I being or am I becoming? For me, it is about the duality of those being the whole. So actually, you said it before, that sense of identity, who am I? And how am I being, if you like, it's bringing that together. So, and who am I becoming? But actually, so I'm sorry, because I got my words mixed up. But essentially, it's so what's my sense of identity? That is my being, and who am I becoming is how I'm living on a daily basis.
Cool. And I think for me, it was that little epiphany about not being. So I think I'm trashing that from my from my vocab. To be, forget that. It's the becoming, and the self mastery is uh, is the space to be, so I can be a fully self-actualized being. But I guess at some point, if I ever self-actualize, then I'll have to ask myself, what's after self-actualization? Is it just
Well,
being?
absolutely. So I have this theory that Maslow's hierarchy is not just a triangle, but a series of triangles set on top of each other,
Yeah.
like a
Or
Christmas
or do you
tree.
never reach the pinnacle of that triangle?
Well,
You might get into the self-actualized
it's a good
box,
point.
but do you ever reach the actual point to pinpoint top and get that bit?
That
Yeah. I'll tell
is
you
where
when I
we'll leave
get
it for
there.
tonight.
That's what
Absolutely.
I'm striving for. I'm striving for that tip. I want to be right at the tip.
I
And
think you'll disappear in a puff of smoke.
that's what I imagine it to be, that I'll be one of these Taoist wizards when it happens, where I can float and I can fly and I can bend time
Well,
and
so
I
much
could
for
do.
us finishing off, because actually, so if you go into the Bible, that's what happened to Elijah. So
Yeah, man.
Elijah got to self-actualization and went
Poof.
up in his macabre, whoof, and off he went.
There you go.
Absolutely.
That's where I'm headed.
And Elisha saw him go and went, okay, now it's down to me.
I'm there, man. That's me. So one day I'm going to be doing this podcast and I'll just disappear. You're going to say, whoa,
You will.
he
And the
did it right
podcast will
here in
never
the
get
digital
released because I
commons.
wouldn't
Like,
know what to
poof.
do with the technology side.
And there he is. He's gone. All right, folks. Anyway, have a good rest of the evening, day, afternoon, whenever you listen to this podcast. We'll catch you next week. You're not going to say bye?
Oh, sorry. Bye. I was
Ciao.
staying quiet because otherwise we could just carry on again because this is a really interesting conversation.